revealed how marrying a stranger fulfilled his best friend's will and transformed their lives. James gripped the steering wheel of his aging pickup, the throaty growl of the engine mixing with the familiar aroma of motor oil and baking bread wafting from Marcus Bakery. Just days ago, he received news that twisted his world. Mark, his best friend since childhood, had passed away gone too soon, leaving nothing but an envelope containing a will that felt more like a curse than a consolation. Marrying a stranger named Sarah to claim the family bakery? Absurd. His mind buzzed with confusion and despair. Bills piled up on his workshop desk, threatening to drown him completely. How could he possibly honor Mark's memory while tethered to a woman he didn't know? An image of Sarah flashed in his mind, a painter, vibrant and unrestrained, completely unlike the methodical life he always led, fixing cars and delivering honest labor to his community. What did Mark see that he didn't? The funeral was a kaleidoscope of grief. Whispers surrounded him. Did you hear? He has to marry her for the bakery. A knot twisted in James's gut. Could he really take this leap? The thought of losing his shop and all the hard work that shaped his life clawed at him, the weight of it pushing down until it felt impossible to breathe. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. James's heart raced as he imagined standing before a judge, exchanging vows with a woman whose history was as heavy as his own. What if she was just as lost as he was? The emotional pressure gripped him. Every moment hung in the balance. He didn't want to betray Mark's spirit, but marrying a stranger felt like a betrayal of his own heart. Each tick of the clock deepened his unease. The irony gnawed at him. He had devoted his life to fixing things, yet here he was, wrenching at the very fabric of his existence. Late into the night, grappling with his emotions, he glanced at the crumbling pile of bakery bills against his own impending foreclosure. Mark's laughter echoed through his memories, and alongside it fled the vibrant force of life and opportunity. The bakery was more than brick and mortar. It was history, dreams, and everything that once connected them with their town. In that moment of raw anguish, the walls of his own small world began to close in. Could he face Sarah, her artistic ambitions and wild dreams, as he crumbled under the weight of obligation? Would his existence become an insufferable mix of sadness wrapped in an obligation to honor his friend? Just when clarity began to strike, a flashing memory of Marcus' eyes, filled with dreams for both of their futures. Out from the shadows, the secrets of their past came forth like whispers in the wind. As the dawn light began to creep in, illuminating the rough-hewn edges of his reality, James stood at a threshold. What if marrying Sarah unlocked more than just a bakery? Could it offer a path to healing? Or would it shatter everything? Navigating the tumult of what would follow became an unbearable thought, an insurmountable challenge looming ahead. He had to make a choice, one that could devastate or illuminate the path forward. With everything on the line, James felt the tightening grip of uncertainty. Would he crumble under the responsibilities, or find a way to navigate this bewildering challenge? As the sun bathed the town in a warm golden glow, a familiar sense of urgency coursed through James. He was acutely aware of time slipping through his fingers. The news of Mark's death loomed like a shadow, relentless and heartbreaking. He had never imagined he would have to grapple with the duality of grief and obligation so sharply. The bakery rested in the heart of his choices. It was not merely a business, but a legacy and a testament of friendship. Mark had intertwined their dreams within its walls, and now James was left holding more than just a will. He was burdened with a promise. In that moment, he realized he needed to confront his fear. Ignoring it wouldn't make it disappear. The thought of standing in front of strangers, performing a marriage rite with a woman whose voice and presence felt foreign to him, ignited a flicker of defiance within. What would she be like? Buried deep beneath layers of doubt, he unearthed a flicker of hope, an unseen catalyst. Maybe this marriage was not entirely rooted in obligation. Perhaps it held untapped potential. He parked beside the bakery, the bricks standing still as ghosts of cherished memories. The old neon sign buzzed faintly above him, reminding him of laughter, late-night conversations, and dreams forged over countless loaves of bread. Rolling down the window, James inhaled the sweet scent of baking goods. The air felt charged, brimming with unspoken possibilities. He imagined how Mark would have approached this scenario with a smirk and an encouraging nod, urging him to embrace rather than flee. With an unexpected wave of resolve, he stepped inside. The echoes of warmth enveloped him, mingling with the familiar sounds of whirling mixers and the soft chatter of preparing pastries. Although the place felt haunted by Mark's absence, something about it began to ignite the corners of his spirit. A sense of belonging, perhaps? James approached the back room, where he had helped Mark countless times. He recognized the shelves lined with flour and sugar, the tools of creation that had sparked his own early interest in baking. He had never viewed it as more than a hobby, merely a distraction from mechanics. But now, as he parsed through his emotions, he felt something shift. Could he reignite that passion? Just then, the back door swung open, and Sarah entered, paint smudges ornamenting her arms. Immediately, her vibrant energy filled the space. Ignoring his uncertainty, she greeted him with a gentle smile. For a brief moment, her authenticity disarmed him, a feeling he hadn't anticipated. "Hey, you must be James," she said, brusquely interrupting his apprehension. "Yeah," he managed to respond. The moment felt raw but vital, her presence unraveling something deep within him. A question surfaced, one he had avoided. "What do you think about this situation?" Her eyes studied him, perhaps trying to gauge the depths of his turmoil. "It's strange, right? But I think it could be something beautiful if we let it." The sincerity of her words sank into him, jolting his introspection. Could they join forces? What if this experience became an unexpected journey toward healing and personal growth, rather than a mere obligation? Suddenly, the fears that had gripped him for days began to unclench, revealing a different path, one where possibility lingered. "What do you want from this?" he asked, searching for clarity. "I want to create," she replied simply, passion alight in her voice. "I want to bring life to our dreams, even if they're born out of loss." James's pulse quickened. He hadn't expected such determination. Her vision and vitality contrasted sharply against his apprehension. Perhaps this marriage, this partnership, could transcend their grief. This newfound insight left him contemplating not only Sarah's dreams, but his as well. As they left the bakery together, steps echoing on the hunt for an uncertain future, James felt an addictive mix of apprehension and curiosity. Would this bond challenge his principles or further illuminate his path? The world beyond them shimmered, whispering the allure of transformation. But before they could fully embrace this journey, an obstacle loomed ahead. A vital meeting at the courthouse awaited them, one that demanded not just a signature, but decisive moments of authenticity and collaboration. The time had come to face their unknowns. The questions hanging unanswered would soon electrify their realities. As James and Sarah approached the courthouse, the intimidating stone facade towered above them, a silent witness to countless other collaborations and conflicts. The air felt thick with anticipation, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than a mere formality. This was a pivotal moment. Each step echoed against his growing anxiety, threading through him a mix of excitement and fear. He was acutely aware that today was about more than signing papers. It was about establishing a new identity, forged from loss and uncertainty. Inside, the atmosphere was sterile yet charged, with couples mingling amidst muted whispers and the occasional scrape of a chair against polished floors. James inhaled deeply, wishing he could harness the scent of anticipation that hung thick in the air. Instead, he focused on Sarah, who seemed to radiate a confidence he craved to emulate. Her steady gaze was both grounding and inspiring. "Are you ready?" she asked, her eyes sparkling with an unyielding determination. The question sent jolts of awareness through him. Readiness wasn't merely a state of mind, but a commitment to the unknown. "I think so," he replied, though self-doubt stung at the edges of his acknowledgement. As they approached the clerk's window, he felt the weight of the promise resting heavily on his back. A partnership, a marriage, was foundationally different from what he had ever anticipated. Was he ready to share his life, however inadvertently, with someone he barely knew? This felt like a radical leap into an unforeseen future. The clerk handed them a stack of paperwork. "Please fill these out," she instructed, her tone authoritative yet indifferent. The weight of the forms felt like a threshold he was reluctant to cross. He glanced sideways at Sarah, who was immersed in pen strokes, her energy infectious, nudging him toward decisive action. It dawned on him that he was tethered to this experience not simply out of obligation to Mark, but because somewhere within him, a flicker of hope was eager to spark a flame. "Okay," he said, choosing clarity. "Let us make this real." He grabbed the pen, the surface cold and tangible against his skin. Words flowed from him, names, dates, signatures, all but symbolic threads weaving them together on paper. Each pen stroke solidified this intricate tapestry of commitment. He felt a swell of something, the pulse of potential. While they completed the forms, he let the moment wash over him, revealing layers of his own ambition that had long remained dormant. Perhaps he could rediscover the baker within, spurred on by this partnership. "Just think about it," Sarah said, her voice cutting through his reverie. "We can create something that honors Mark while still being ours. We have the chance to reimagine the bakery, infuse it with our own stories." Something within him stirred. The idea began to take root. What if he used this partnership not only to meet expectations, but to cultivate the passions he'd once hidden? What if he told stories of joy through bread and shared meals? As they submitted the last form, the clerk nodded, processing their application. "Congratulations, you'll be notified when the union is recognized." The finality of her words was exhilarating yet terrifying. James felt the ground beneath him shift. He was unanchored but excited. He locked eyes with Sarah, sharing an electric acknowledgement of what was to come. Whatever their journey would entail, they would navigate it together. Leaving the courthouse felt surreal, as though he had stepped into a new reality. The sunlight seemed brighter, more optimistic, teasing the edges of their uncertain future. Yet, he could sense the undercurrents of challenge ahead. Could he intertwine his ambitions with Sarah's? Would he discover that the passion within him extended beyond mere mechanics into artistry? As they walked toward the bakery, determination surged. Yet, lurking in the back of his mind, the echoes of expectations loomed large, reminding him of the ghosts they were tasked to confront. Before they could step inside to enact their dreams, he recalled the initials scrawled across the bakery's wall, a testament from Mark. What do we do about the financial situation? The question hung in the air, brittle and fragile. The path forward shimmered ahead, filled with previously unimagined possibilities. But its clarity was dimmed by looming figures. A bank meeting awaited, and unanswered questions about Mark's debts loomed large. How they navigated the churning waters of grief, ambition, and the business that tied them all together would determine not only their futures, but the legacy they would create from loss. What would it take to find balance, to transform obligations into opportunities? With each step toward the bakery, James felt the weight of expectation pressing in. The critical moment had arrived. They would need to summon all their courage to face the challenges ahead. As they stood in front of the bakery, the faded sign creaking slightly in the breeze, a rush of uncertainty swept through James. Outside, the world continued. Cars passed by, and laughter echoed from a nearby park. But here, inside the sanctuary of their shared future, the reality of their situation began to press down upon him. "What is our next move?" Sarah asked, breaking the silence that threatened to suffocate them. Her calm demeanor was a counterpoint to the turmoil swirling inside him. This was the moment for decisive action, but the weight of Mark's legacy loomed like a specter, casting a shadow over their plans. "We need a financial plan," he said, surprised by the clarity in his voice. "We can't create anything meaningful without addressing the debts first. It feels irresponsible to dive into anything else without knowing where we stand." His words sounded more assertive than he felt. Vulnerability and resolve intertwined within him, fueling a determination he hadn't fully realized he possessed. "Agreed," Sarah said, her expression serious. "Let us tackle these finances head-on. I'll set up a meeting with the bank to discuss options." James felt an appreciative warmth towards her proactive spirit. It was clear she was willing to step up and confront their reality. He marveled at how partnership could transform individual struggles into collective resolve. Their dynamic was shifting, and in that moment, he recognized that they were becoming more than independent souls bound by loss. They were allies embarking on a shared endeavor. He took a deep breath and pushed the bakery door open. The familiar scent of flour and yeast embraced him, both comforting and poignant. It was a reminder of the life Mark had crafted, a life that contained dreams yet to be fulfilled. James glanced around. The clutter of mismatched furniture, the rustic decor that spoke of warmth and community. "Let us envision what we want this place to be," Sarah suggested, unrolling her sleeves and heading towards the large prep table. "If we can incorporate what Mark envisioned, while adding our own vision," her voice trailed off, as if she too sensed the enormity of the task ahead. "It's about having a legacy that honors his passion but is also authentically ours," James added, the concept blossoming like freshly kneaded dough in his mind. "We could host community events, create seasonal specialties, maybe even incorporate storytelling into our menus." The thought electrified him. A bakery was more than a place for bread. It could be a communal hub, a gathering space that combined culinary artistry with personal narratives. Exactly. Sarah's enthusiasm flooded the room, brightening the atmosphere. "Imagine weekly storytelling nights where people share memories while enjoying our treats. We could have a section dedicated to Mark his favorite recipes, his story. People could contribute their own recipes and stories too." James's heart raced with possibility. The bakery could become a living repository of shared experiences, a tapestry of the lives that had intersected in that small space. Tapping into the emotional layers of their community not only honored Mark's legacy, but also allowed them to nurture their own identities within it. This was a bold pivot from their initial approach, but it felt right. But then, reality tightened its grip. "What about the money?" he asked, letting the inquiry hang in the air like the aroma of baking bread, lingering and complex. "If we want to make substantial changes, we'll need funds, and with Mark's debts unresolved, we're standing on unstable ground." Sarah nodded, and the fervor in her eyes dimmed slightly as the gravity of their situation settled over them. "Let us prioritize the bank meeting. Maybe we can negotiate a payment plan, or, better yet, find a way to leverage what we have to fund the transformation." "Leverage what we have, right?" he echoed, the words bouncing around in his mind. It was time to confront the shadows of the past before they could mold the future they desired. Bolstered by a sense of accountability, James picked up a box of files stacked haphazardly on the side counter. As he sifted through invoices and financial statements, a sense of urgency filled him. What if he started but paused, feeling the weight of the unaddressed emotions? What if we included the community in this? We could create a crowdfunding campaign based on our vision, tapping into those who cared for Mark and want to see his legacy alive. A spark ignited in Sarah's gaze. The challenge ahead was no longer about survival, but creating something meaningful. Their success would not hinge solely on resolving debts, but engaging with the community that held the spirit of Mark within it. As they filled out the initial paperwork for the bank meeting, the tension that had choked them slowly dissipated, replaced by a burgeoning excitement. James could feel the walls around his doubts beginning to crack, allowing hope to seep in. Yet, as they prepared to finalize their plans, another weight crept in, a nagging reminder that financial matters were often fraught with hurdles. The resolution of debts was a necessary stepping stone, but would their community rally behind them? Would those who mourned Mark be willing to invest in the vision of a bakery reborn? With pressing urgency, they headed out the door, ready to tackle the first challenge of their partnership. Each step forward felt like a tentative negotiation with destiny, full of limitless potential yet shadowed by the need for resolution. The time for confrontation rippled just beneath the surface. They were on the verge of facing the very forces that could make or break their aspirations. What other surprises awaited them during this pivotal moment of reinvention? The door to the bank loomed before James, an imposing barrier between their dreams and the grim realities they had to confront. Anxiety buzzed in his chest as he stepped inside, the sterile air contrasting sharply with the warm, inviting aroma of the bakery. The lobby was lined with polished wood and brass accents, with customers seated around glass-topped tables, their expressions a mixture of concentration and detachment. "Remember, we're just here to present our case," Sarah whispered, sensing his mounting unease. Her reassuring presence anchored him as they approached the front desk, where a stern-looking woman greeted them. "Name?" she asked briskly, barely looking up from her screen. "James Cole and Sarah Reynolds." We have an appointment regarding a business proposal. James met her eyes, willing confidence into his voice. He didn't want to falter. He needed to prove himself, not just to the bank, but to Sarah, to the memory of Mark, and to himself. After a brief wait, they were ushered into a small meeting room. The air felt charged with possibilities, and yet James could also sense the weight of doubt lingering just beneath the surface. Their prospective lender, a tall man in a tailored suit, sat behind a desk cluttered with papers and a laptop. He smiled politely, but did not seem particularly invested in their venture. "How can I help you today?" he asked, his tone neutral. James took a breath, feeling the pressure of the moment settle like dust in the corners of his mind. "We're looking to discuss the financial status of our bakery and explore options for a potential transformation," he began, finding strength in the clarity of his purpose. "We have some ideas about creating a community-focused space around Mark's legacy." The banker raised an eyebrow, the hint of skepticism evident in his expression. "Community-focused? How do you plan to fund this transformation amidst existing debts?" Each word felt like a dart piercing their delicate aspirations. "We're looking into crowdfunding," Sarah chimed in, her tone confident despite the banker's visible skepticism. "We believe that by engaging our community, we can not only pay off the existing debts, but also establish a profitable model going forward." As they outlined their vision, weekly storytelling events, a nod to Mark's legacy, and culinary innovations, James could feel the tension in the room shift slightly. Perhaps it was the glimmer of intrigue in the banker's eyes, or the way Sarah's infectious enthusiasm filled the air. With each detail they shared, James found himself becoming more animated, deeply immersed in the prospects that mirrored his passion. But each time he glanced at the banker's unyielding expression, doubts wormed their way back into his mind. After all, they were presenting a dream built on wavering foundations. "What if I can't convince him?" he thought, grappling with the fear that had shadowed him since Mark's passing. As they wrapped up their pitch, the banker leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled under his chin. The silence stretched heavy, and James felt the flames of anticipation flicker uncertainly within him. "I'll admit, the community angle is interesting," the banker finally spoke, the hint of a smile forming. "However, it's a major risk. Crowdfunding isn't guaranteed. How will you secure loans against that uncertainty?" The question sliced through the defensive walls James had built. We plan to show a clear financial model illustrating potential revenue streams and community engagement metrics. His voice wavered, the confidence that had surged moments ago now wilting under pressure. "Have you considered what happens if this fails? The personal and financial repercussions?" Each word landed like a stone in his stomach. The truth was, they hadn't fully explored the depths of failure, nor had they prepared for the very real possibility of setbacks. He had been so focused on the vision that he had skirted around the fear of confronting their potential failures. "I guess we'll have to take that chance," Sarah interjected, her voice steady and resolute. "We're willing to make sacrifices to honor Mark and create something valuable for our community." James admired her conviction, but doubt clawed at his mind. Were they truly ready for this leap? Could they instigate a change powerful enough to resonate beyond their initial ambition? The banker regarded them thoughtfully. "You may look into restructuring the existing debt as a first step. Show me a detailed plan that addresses both debts and your goals. We can revisit in a month." Disappointment washed over him, like cold rain on a warm day. They hadn't secured the support they sought. The future felt uncertain again, the burden they carried weighing heavier than before. As they left the bank, the weight of unresolved fears coupled with an unexpected sense of resolve surged within him. "We can't let this deter us," Sarah said, her eyes glimmering with steadfast determination. "We just need to be strategic." "Strategic," James repeated, the word reverberating through his mind. The keys to their future were hidden within those discussions. They had to confront their fears, engage with the unknown, and solidify their plan. As they walked back towards the bakery, a thought pulled at him. What if we host a small community meet-up to share our vision, get feedback, and rally support before we launch the campaign? Sarah stopped, a look of consideration crossing her face. That could work, but it has to be authentic, the heart of Mark's legacy. It can't simply be a pitch. His pulse quickened at the prospect, but a deeper prompt lingered. What if this meeting opened a door to a truth they hadn't yet recognized? What if the community, reflecting their rawer aspects, revealed both their potential failures and their untapped strengths. With every stride toward the bakery, James felt the intertwining of fear and hope, forming an intricate thread that pulsated with the urgency of change. They were on the cusp of facing themselves, their community, and the very fears that had paralyzed them. And perhaps, just perhaps, it was time to confront what lay underneath the surface: hidden talents, buried stories, and the unknown capacity for resilience waiting to be unleashed. Would they rise to that challenge, or would the shadows of doubt extinguish the light of their ambition? The next morning, the air was thick with possibility as James stood in the bakery, his fingers brushing over the surface of the countertop, while his mind raced with the weight of their recent bank meeting. The rhythmic hum of the refrigeration units settled into a gentle background noise, a stark reminder of the day-to-day operations that still required his attention. He gazed out the window, watching the morning sun glaze the street with light. His vision for the bakery was bold: a tapestry woven with Mark's legacy, community creativity, and culinary dreams. Yet the uncertainty gnawed at him. How could he transform these aspirations into a concrete plan? "Let us get organized," he muttered to himself, shaking off the remnants of doubt that threatened to encroach. He pulled out a stack of old bills and receipts, reminders of past struggles, but also of lessons learned. It wasn't just about the shelves full of pastries. It was about reviving a spirit, cultivating a collective growth that honored Mark. As Sarah arrived for her shift, the weight of their recent discussions hovered between them, the air charged with unspoken thoughts. "So how are we doing this?" she asked, her eyes bright with resolve. James chuckled, a wave of appreciation washing over him for her unwavering resolve. "I think we need to lay out a strategy. Concrete steps. Identify the risks as well as the opportunities." He gestured at a blank notepad laid on the counter, which suddenly felt pivotal. They both leaned over it, writing down ideas. The excitement of the brainstorming session quickly transformed into a flood of words. Ideas ranged from scheduling open discussions with regular patrons to potential partnerships with local businesses rooted in their community. A mind map of possibilities sprung to life, slowly bridging their dreams with actionable strategies. "What if we spent time developing a customer feedback form?" James suggested, his enthusiasm rising. "If we can outline what our community wants, it could shape our offerings and show the banker we're serious about our direction." Sarah nodded, her fingers tracing the lines of their developing map. "Absolutely. And we can incorporate special events that echo Mark's story, maybe even a legacy week showcasing his favorite dishes." There was an energy blossoming between them, a shared sense of purpose that began to eclipse the shadows of doubt lurking in the corners of their minds. "We should also think about how to highlight individual stories from the community in our events," he added, feeling the exhilarating push of collaboration. "Personal narratives can transform plain marketing." "It'll speak to our mission," Sarah said, her voice steady as she jotted down ideas. With each petal of inspiration they added to their budding plan, James felt a new wave of adrenaline. This was more than planning. It was a resurrection of purpose. But it also pushed him further into self-examination. What if they uncovered something about themselves they weren't ready to confront? They both frowned momentarily as doubt spiraled. "What if they don't care?" James questioned, a perilous question that reared its head uninvited. "Yeah, but what if they do?" Sarah countered, the promise in her tone igniting a counter-leverage to his fear. "We've got nothing to lose by being authentic." James considered her words deeply. Authenticity required them to be vulnerable, welcoming the possibility of failure along with success. Was he prepared to let himself be that exposed? The thought of standing before the community, presenting their raw ambition, terrified him, yet somehow felt liberating. As they emerged from their huddle, the practicalities of their mission solidified with each passing moment. They decided on a date for their first community meeting, a pivotal fork in their path, catalyzing the deeper connection they needed with their clientele. With the momentum of determination behind him, James grabbed the broken corner of a piece of paper on the table. "This is it," he declared, startling himself with his conviction. "We're laying our truth out on the line." But a gnawing realization struck him. What other truths were hidden, waiting not just within their business aspirations, but within themselves? As they continued to refine their plans, James realized that every decision would challenge them, pushing them into territories of discomfort, forcing them to confront their personal fears, values, and the shadows of doubt they both carried. "Then let us make it count," Sarah said, her fervor igniting a new spark of audacity in him. The moment had arrived to push forward, leap into the unknown, and embrace the strength that came through their partnership. There was no turning back. Yet, even as excitement thrummed through his veins, one unanswered question lingered, spiraling around the edges of his mind. Are both of them truly ready for the revealing of themselves that their community would demand? With that question hanging in the air like a storm gathering strength, they dove headfirst into their preparations, both aware that the smallest misstep could unravel everything they had built, and yet, somehow, that very thought felt like the fresh air they desperately craved. As the days rolled into a blur of activity, James and Sarah found themselves entrenched in an escalating whirlwind of brainstorming and planning. Each morning began with a ritualistic fervor, their notepad evolving into a vibrant canvas of ideas and dreams. Though the groundwork they laid was invigorating, doubt lurked always on the perimeter, whispering fears of inadequacy. James felt its grip tighten, especially as the date of their first community meeting loomed just a week away. There was a sharp contrast between the excitement of new possibilities and the haunting images of failure occupying his mind. One afternoon, as James kneaded dough with a practiced rhythm, a plethora of thoughts surged through him. He paused, exhaling sharply. What if no one showed up? What if their offerings fell flat? The fears played in a ceaseless loop, feeding his anxiety until it became nearly palpable. What was bubbling beneath his surface now was more than just concern about the bakery. It was about his self-worth, his identity. Sarah entered just as he wrestled with those nagging thoughts. "You look deep in thought," she said, her keen observation cutting through his haze. "What is going on?" He stopped kneading and met her gaze. "I'm terrified," he admitted, surprised by the urgency of his own voice. "What if all this is for nothing? What if we go out there, lay everything bare, and people just don't care?" Her brow furrowed slightly, but her expression remained tranquil. "James, think about it. This isn't just about the bakery. We're fighting for our vision, for something real. It matters, even if it doesn't turn out how we want." Her conviction was a radiant light amid his spiral of chaos. "That's easy to say," he replied, feeling the weight of vulnerability in her words. "But what if we expose ourselves and fail? Or we could succeed," she reminded him, her tone unwavering, pressing her palms firmly on the countertop. "That's the risk we take. It's about being authentic, right? If we aren't real, we'll never know what impact we could have." Her confidence illuminated a flicker of resolve in him. It stoked something primal, something that felt like a call to arms. What if this endeavor was more than business? What if it was an exploration into their truest selves? In a moment of clarity, James leaned into the beating of his heart. "You're right," he stated, newfound determination swelling in his chest. "We can't be afraid to show our passion. This plan means everything to us, and it must reflect our truth." Encouraged by this revelation, he shifted gears in his mind. Instead of fearing the unknown, he could harness it. "Let us put together a presentation that captures not only our offerings, but our journey and why it matters. We can show how Mark influenced our vision," James proposed, energy coursing through him once again. With Sarah grinning at his rekindled spirit, they began strategizing how to share their personal connection to the bakery's legacy. Each story they composed felt like a stepping stone towards a deeper purpose. They envisioned vivid narratives that tied Mark's teachings, their hopes, and the bakery's future together in one cohesive narrative. As they crafted their presentation, their bond deepened. Each reflection unearthed more about themselves, James's determination to reclaim his identity and Sarah's unwavering support, serving as a foundation for his growth. He discovered an intrinsic courage he hadn't recognized before. But the doubt still clung to the edges of their ambitions. Could they bear the weight of truth? The more they revealed, the more vulnerable they became. As the preparations culminated, an unsettling question surfaced: what would happen if they bared their souls and still faced rejection? Their meeting approach morphed into a transformative event, oscillating between anticipation and dread. As they rehearsed their presentation, addressing each uncomfortably raw moment, James paused suddenly. I wonder what hidden truths might come to light for both of us. Are we ready to confront those? The air thickened as their gazes met, yet illumination shone within the uncertainty. There was power in navigating the unknown together and awakening to the strength they could draw from facing it. They were on the brink of something monumental, steeped in potential and tethered by fears. With their first meeting on the horizon sharpening the stakes, James's inner questioning hung in the air like dark clouds. The biggest challenge remained, lurking just out of sight. Would the unveiling truly break them or propel them further into their destiny together? The morning of the meeting arrived, and with it came an undercurrent of electricity that coursed through every moment. James stood in front of the mirror, adjusting the collar of his shirt, a futile attempt to mask the turmoil roiling within. His heart galloped as doubt and determination clashed like titans in his chest. Today, they would stand before the community, unveiling not just their bakery, but their very souls. As they arranged the display table, James noticed his hands trembled slightly. It wasn't just fear that triggered this response, but the burgeoning realization that he was about to confront everything he had buried. He took a deep breath, grounding himself, and focused on the scent of fresh bread wafting through the air. It reminded him of Mark, of warmth, laughter, and of a man who had always believed in them. The thought steadied him momentarily. They were doing this not just for themselves, but for Mark's legacy. Are you ready? Sarah's question cut through his reverie. Her eyes sparkled with the blend of excitement and trepidation, mirroring his own heart's cadence. As I'll ever be, he replied, though uncertainty nestled in his voice. For a fleeting moment, a wave of regret washed over him. What if this wasn't the right path? What if they misrepresented themselves? But he forced himself to push aside those thoughts, channeling his energy into a resolute focus on the task ahead. As the meeting commenced, an eclectic mix of community members filled the tiny hall. Their faces ranged from familiar friends to curious strangers, each pair of eyes locked on James and Sarah as they began their presentation. James felt a bead of sweat trickle down his back, a reminder that their truth was about to be laid bare. They spoke passionately, weaving stories of their journey, of late nights filled with dough and dreams, of laughter and failures, and the guiding light that was Mark. The narrative flowed seamlessly between them, but as they reached the heart of the presentation, the recounting of Mark's last days, the atmosphere shifted. A tangible tension settled over the audience. Would this vulnerability resonate, or would their humanity be met with indifference? James caught a glimpse of Sarah's expression as she shared a particularly emotional memory. There was strength in her vulnerability that left him momentarily speechless. She was transcending. She was reclaiming her place in this world. As he took over the narrative, he could feel the weight of his own fears beginning to dissipate. This wasn't merely a pitch. It was a journey into their pasts, a revealing of their innermost fears and desires. The crowd leaned in closer, their eyes softening, and encouraging nods emerged like rays of sunlight piercing through the clouds of doubt. The more they spoke, the more liberated James felt. The fears that had once constricted him began to unravel, replaced by a newfound sense of purpose. Perhaps this platform was not just about the bakery, it was about empowering others to embrace their vulnerabilities as well. As they wrapped up their presentation, the applause felt like thunder in the air, electrifying and overwhelming. Faces that had once appeared indifferent now glowed with understanding and respect. A few members of the audience approached them, their eyes gleaming with the shared experience of heartbreak and hope. However, beneath the warmth and acceptance lingered a faint trace of anxiety. A question gnawed at the edges of James's mind. If this went well, what would be expected of them next? Did opening this door to vulnerability mean they would now have to constantly showcase their battles, their failures, and their recovery? Just as he began to contemplate the implications, a voice from the back called out, "What's next for you both?" James's heart raced. Their future was still shrouded in uncertainty, like a fog obscuring the horizon. He glanced toward Sarah, whose expression was a mix of anticipation and concern. The world they had sought to create together was poised to expand, and with it came the pressure of expectations. In a heartbeat, he realized they would have to navigate this new labyrinth together, facing challenges he yet could not foresee. What lay ahead would require even greater honesty and deeper courage. "Let us dive deeper," he declared, adrenaline surging within him. "There's more to uncover than we ever imagined." With those words echoing in his mind, James stepped forward, preparing to embrace whatever came next, fully aware that growth rarely came without discomfort. As he laid the groundwork for their next steps, he understood that the real challenge of authenticity was just beginning to unfold. The echo of applause faded, leaving a charged silence that filled every corner of the small hall. James felt his heart still racing, a tempo that matched the high, challenging stakes he now faced. He turned to Sarah, those shared moments of vulnerability still rippling between them. The sweetness of their success mingled with a sharp twinge of trepidation. What did it mean to dive deeper, to embrace the expanse of their newfound honesty? "James," Sarah whispered, her brow furrowing with concern, "what if they expect us to keep sharing like this? What if we can't live up to it?" Her vulnerability mirrored his own, feeding the doubts churning in his gut. They had exposed their wounds for the sake of connection, but now, the weight of expectation pressed down on their shoulders. The applause had been affirming, yet it opened a chasm of uncertainty. How could they follow this revelation? "We'll find a way," James replied, his voice steadier than he felt. "We've always found a way." But the truth gnawed at him. Would continuing to share their story truly help others? Or would it turn into a heavy burden they couldn't bear? At the heart of it all, James understood that connecting with their audience meant embracing authenticity, but that authenticity was raw and unfiltered. They returned to the bakery, its warmth and familiar sense an intimate refuge amid the swirling chaos of expectations. The laughter of customers and the clinking of spoons brought temporary solace as James busied himself with pastry preparations. Kneading dough served as a mental anchor, allowing him to process the mix of anxiety and exhilaration. Yet, as he rolled the dough out, another realization washed over him. The community had reached out, and now, they were collectively waiting for more of the heartfelt tales that had ignited the evening before. What could he possibly disclose next, and at what cost? Was it ethically responsible to share every facet of their experience, particularly the more painful ones? As he pondered these questions, a sudden thought struck him. He had always shied away from acknowledging his own talent, his ability to weave stories through baking. Each loaf he crafted held a story, each flavor a memory linked to Mark. Could he transform baking into a narrative medium, using their bakery as a canvas to explore emotions and experiences? That notion ignited a spark of creative energy, something he hadn't felt in a while. James envisioned a series of baking nights, a platform for the community to gather, share tales of grief and joy, and connect over their love for baked goods. This could become a safe space, a place for exploration of their shared humanity, instead of solely focusing on their mutual losses. "Sarah," he called out, excitement bubbling to the surface as he outlined his idea. "What if we host baking nights? We could encourage people to share stories while we create together. It would keep the spirit of what we started going." Her eyes shone with inspiration, reflecting the energy radiating between them. "That's brilliant. It could bring everyone closer, and we can weave our story into each gathering." They began to plan, jotting down ideas and setting dates, ignited by a vision that transcended their fears. For the first time since Mark's passing, James felt a robust sense of agency flourish within him. Then a sense of unease plucked at his confidence. What if their own stories overshadowed those of the participants, or worse, became a spectacle? Instinctively, he checked his motivations. Was he genuinely seeking connection, or did he desire validation? In the bustling safety of their bakery, James's enthusiasm collided with an emerging sense of responsibility. He understood that their journey toward deeper connection would demand humility and openness, not simply in sharing their story, but in creating room for others to step forward, offering their truths as well. As they finalized details, he sensed how precious moments could yield profound growth. But at that instant, he also felt an echo of tension wrapping around his heart, the possibility of resistance. What if the community didn't embrace this idea? What if their vulnerability was not reciprocated? Questions lingered heavier than before, gnashing at him as the excitement morphed into apprehension. As they prepared to unveil their upcoming initiative, James felt a profound sense of commitment rise within. He was determined to face whatever might follow, but in the distance, shadows of doubt clouded the horizon. With their bakery as the backdrop, they were ready to step beyond the frame of their fears, leading into uncharted territory, where expectations and authenticity would dance in tandem. Little did he know that outside the warm bakery walls, unsought challenges lurked, waiting to test their resolve and the sincerity of their newfound ambitions. As the days sped onward towards the first baking night, James took a moment to reflect on how far he had come. The once familiar suffocation of doubt had given way to a burgeoning confidence that radiated from the core of his being. Each day served as affirmation of his commitment not just to the bakery, but to a partnership with Sarah that had deepened unexpectedly. He marveled at the transformation occurring within him. Where he once felt restricted by obligation, he now thrived on an expansive sense of possibility. As the sun dipped below the horizon on the eve of the first event, he stood in the bakery, eyes scanning the vibrant array of ingredients laid out before him. The air was rich with the sweet scent of vanillas and spices. He felt a powerful connection to each bowl, each bag of flour, and every spoonful of sugar, a sensory reminder of the stories waiting to be nurtured and shared. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" Sarah's voice interrupted his thoughts, filled with excitement and a hint of anxious energy. "More than ready," he replied with a genuine smile. "I can't wait to hear what people have to share, even if we have to wade through some nervous waters to get there." Her presence had become a stabilizing force in his life, a reminder that together, they would navigate the turbulent waters of vulnerability and potential failure. Together, they prepared the bakery for what lay ahead, transforming the familiar space into a haven for creativity and conversation. They strung colorful lights across the corners, arranged cozy seating, and placed an invitation for each participant to bring a recipe connected to memories of loved ones. As they put the finishing touches on the setup, James felt an exhilarating knot of nerves settle into his stomach. The community had invested so much into this opportunity for connection. What if it didn't resonate? Doubt crossed his mind in a flash. "James." The calm in Sarah's tone drew his attention. "I know this feels huge, but remember, we have already stepped outside our comfort zone. It's okay to be uncertain." "Absolutely. This could change everything for us," he conceded, confident yet aware of the stakes. After a restless night, like a child waiting for Christmas, James awoke, brimming with anticipation. As the sun rose and painted the sky with hues of orange and pink, he felt a sense of affirmation gather strength within him. Their first guest arrived early, a familiar face from the neighborhood. One after another, people wandered in, excited, curious, sometimes doubting, each brandishing their stories and baked goods. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and gentle conversations, stirring up an energetic current that pulsed through the room. James and Sarah welcomed each guest warmly, sharing their own stories of loss, strength, resilience, and dreams for the future. And very quickly, as they began to bake together, that sense of uncertainty transformed into warmth and familiarity. Flour flew, laughter erupted, and personal stories emerged like the buttery golden layers of croissants breaking apart. Today is not just about baking. It's about creating something that honors our past while showing the world our true selves, James called out, feeling the energy shift in the room as people began to pour their hearts into the creations. As the evening unfolded, a remarkable metamorphosis took place. Participants shared more than recipes. They shared tears, laughter, and moments of joy and heartache that clustered under the bakery's twinkling lights. It was cathartic, an intertwining of lives and experiences that each guest laid bare. James reveled in the newfound connection emerging before him. In those moments with the community, each shared memory, each taste of a loved one's recipe, he embraced the reality of vulnerability not as a burden, but as an invitation for authenticity. As the final batch of baked goods came out of the oven, applause broke out. Sarah turned to James, her eyes glistening. "Look at what we created together. This isn't just a baking night. It's a revolution of shared experiences." The community applauded, acknowledging both the tangible results of their baking and the unmeasurable, forged connections in that room. Seeing the joy spread among them, James grasped the truth: transformation was rooted not only in honoring Mark's legacy, but also in facing vulnerabilities and emerging with something beautiful. In that moment, amid the echo of warmth and the spirit of growth filling the bakery, James transformed, fully weaving his passion for baking with a newfound confidence and connection. He had conquered not just his fear of exposure, but embraced it as a part of his journey. As the event came to a close, guests lingered, reluctant to leave the magic created amidst dough and narratives. James stood side by side with Sarah, watching their community flourish and knowing he had found both his voice and a vital purpose. They were no longer two isolated figures held together by a common obligation. They were partners in an endeavor that narrated love, loss, and the celebration of life. Their own fears had propelled them into the very heart of a transformation they never anticipated. The once uncertain future now shone with clarity and direction. Their shared journey was just beginning, but they had firmly established the foundation of something extraordinary. In the end, James understood that true fulfillment came not from escaping fear, but in harnessing it a leap towards authenticity and connection with those around him. And it was in that harmonious blend of baking, storytelling, and community that he truly succeeded, no longer just as a mechanic or even a baker, but as a resilient architect reshaping his narrative into one filled with possibility and hope. Now, it's your turn to become part of this journey, discovering stories of strength, resilience, and triumph. You need to subscribe now to ensure you don't miss more exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and help elevate these incredible narratives into the hearts of others. Comment your reactions and theories about how this journey might evolve. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who could use a reminder of the transformative power of connection. Your support is vital. Don't wait even one more second to share.